Yeah.
So pleased to be joined today by a member of the legendary Von Erich family. It's Kevin Von Erich. Kevin, thank you so much for joining me today on Under the Ring Pro Wrestling Conversations. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. How are you today?
I'm doing great. It's great to see you. Uh, so the Von Erichs have always been a really big deal, to me as a wrestling fan. But now your family is like totally mainstream with Iron Claw now in movie theaters. How do you
Yeah.
feel about so many people learning about you and your family now?
Well, it was quite a lot to digest, I'll tell you. My daughter told me one day that they're going to make a movie about us. And so I wanted to find out what they would use for information, and would it be just YouTube and word of mouth? And I just didn't know because they didn't ask me anything about the movie. They just did it, and it's based on the family, but I'm not going to be real hard on them when you think that they had like uh, 10 years to try to put into a little 2 hour window. And so there were sacrifices, they had to, with the truth quite a bit, but I wanted people to enjoy the movie, and I didn't have much to complain about. And so I thought I'd let it go.
Yeah, and it's not a documentary. I've seen like the one that WWE did on World Class, and then the Heroes of World Class one that came out. So and the Dark Side of the Ring too that was out on the Von Erich. So like I'm pretty familiar with the story anyway. But like if it's a major motion picture, they're going to have some creative license of how they kind of shape it and how they kind of sculpt it. What
Yeah.
what did you think of the movie and the job that Zac Efron did as you?
Well, he's a consummate professional. He really is. And I admire those people. That's tough, a tough job. And it's not easy to be me. And so I think he did a great job. But know that the story, it really came off hard on my dad. Now, I thought it would be important for the people to know how much we loved each other because it was something about our family. We had loyalty and real, you know, concern for each other. And, the movie doesn't express that really. It talks about we were pretty competitive, but that's really not the truth. We were really all, for each other. And it was a family business. And it was really a great time. We had a lot of fun. So I can't
Hearing
complain about them dying too young because we did have a great time when they were
hearing
here.
that too, what was it like being around Fritz Von Erich? I mean, if anybody's going to know, you were there.
Yeah, he was he was something else. He was. Seems like whenever you're in your bed and you think about things you said during the day, you know, and you think, oh, I wish I would have said that. Oh, I wish, Well, my dad was the kind of guy that he always said the right thing. I mean, he was like logical. Everybody admired him because he was like um, so matter of fact, so plain spoken and honorable. My dad's word was his bond. And you shook his hand, it was like a contract, an agreement you could depend on. And I admired him for that. And to be around my dad was like, it was my little brothers, and I just thought he was great. We just wanted to be just like him.
So the kind of guy you kind of knew where you stood with him all the time. There was no pretenses about him at all.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Like, I know in the movie it talks about how my dad had favorites, and we kind of joked around about that, but it was kind of just all in fun, but then again, it was just it. We were brothers that were boys, wild little boys that live in the country in Texas. We had our black labs and blackberries we ate every day, and just lived on chocolate milk and and hamburgers. We were country boys, and we just had a whole lot of fun. It was just a great childhood. And my dad was like he built us a tree house, or it was a tower, like we had such great times. We always rode our horses everywhere, without a saddle because we like to ride them in the water, and so just fun.
I think the reason that the story of the Von Erichs resonates so much is because it is a story of a family that was together, but it's also a story that is one of great tragedy. What do you think people can learn the most from the story of the Von Erichs, whether they get it from the movie or whether they're getting it from you?
Well, I've thought about that, and I really think if you watch and really if you know our family, well then as we as I lost a brother, like every 2 years for 10 years, I lost all of them. I mean, Jackie was electrocuted when he was 6, and I was maybe 3 years old, 2 years old at the time. But I do remember him. And, they were such considerate, positive thinkers. We all loved Vince Lombardi and football, and that was kind of what we all did. We were athletes, and everything we did in the mornings, we woke up and we were running or swimming or lifting weights and challenging each other and competing against each other. But it was to make each other better, and we just lived Texas country style.
Yep. So you recently returned from a trip to Israel. Can you explain a little bit about how that came together?
Oh well, I love Israel. I got a letter from a little Palestinian girl back in '85. Here, Pam and I read it, and I've always, I'm a Christian, and Israel's important to me, and chosen people. And I went over there, and the border police arranged my trip. I had security in front and back of me in jeeps, but it was in 1985. It was just unbelievable the following that we'd had over there from our show, and they were like the such happy, joyful people too. And this thing that came, so I met the president, President Herzog,
Hmm.
back in '85. Well, now his son is president, and it's President Herzog again, but Junior.
Wow.
And he invited me over, and I had a Jewish and a Arab following, a big following over there, and I wanted to send my condolences and my love and support for all of them, and just be some positive influence that I am. I just wanted to hurt with them. There's nothing I could say to make it better, because the things that happened that went over there in that kibbutz, that Berai, where I went to, I mean, heinous. It's just indescribable. The evil that these Hamas came up with. These people, they don't want a two-state solution over there. They hate Israel. They just want to kill them. That's period. That's all it is to it. It's generations and generations of grandfathers teaching their sons and grandsons hate. And it's just the Jews are beautiful people. They want peace so bad, but Palestinians do not. Their schools are all about kidnapping Jews and killing them, and they do little plays. It's just
And
natural to them. It's just
I think it's
hate.
important to say too. You had mentioned in an interview that you did that that Palestinians are not necessarily Hamas too. To make that
Yeah,
clear, not necessarily everybody it's not black and white totally when you have a
yeah,
terrorist organization involved too.
yeah. I'm sure that kind of hate is just not natural. There are people in Gaza that I know want peace. I mean, this Hamas, they launch their rockets from playgrounds and hide their weapons in children's rooms and tunnels under the children's room and under hospitals. It's like the kind of things they do are just beyond the pale. This isn't an army. These are just terrorists. And I always thought that the way the Jews wanted peace so bad, I always thought maybe they'll get it because they want it so much. But with the kind of hate they're up against, they've tried a two-state solution and they don't want it. I don't know what they're going to do either. They're furious and they've really been wronged. And but who
It's,
knows? The way uh, by this kibbutz that I went to with the army, the kind of things these people do, the dogs, they torture dogs. That's another thing they're into is just uh, cruelty to animals, and they kill like
it's interesting to hear you say that you wanted to hurt with them too, because it's like you have this unique relationship with, you know, the wrestling fans over there in Israel and in the Middle East. But for what you've been through and for what they have been through, you know, the relationship that you're able to build with people who are missing family members, who are have family members who are hostages. It's like you have a connection there, whether it's through your wrestling or whether it's through whatever your faith or whatever it is. You have that connection with the folks that you were visiting over there.
yeah, well, that is just to hurt with them. You know, there's really nothing I could say that would, you know, I love my brother so much, but to lose a brother, you know, my brothers were men, and all men will die, and we'll all die, and it's just life, and a man has to get up and be tough and make it happen with your children or wife, and so when people say, "Kev, you're so strong," well, it's not really that. I'm not any stronger than they are. It's just that I had no choice. And if they were put the same thing, they would have done the same. A lot of people had it worse than me or have problems in their life. But, you know, when you come back, when you overcome, you're even stronger and you're better. And I hope the people of Israel can, they're supportive to each other too. So they've got each other. They're like brothers. It's beautiful over there. And I mean, Arab and Jew alike. People love their country. But
Interesting.
there, yeah, but there is that element over there in Gaza. It's hate on top of hate, and it's
What
really sad to see.
what was that first card in Israel like? I guess it was 1985. What was like take me back to that and just what that experience was like going over there. And I'm even interested to know like, you know, what were they reacting to even? Like it's just they hadn't seen anything you got like you guys live and in person probably ever.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, in the Middle East, they're kind of particular about their entertainment, and wrestling is like right up their design because it's man against man, and it's acceptable to everything. Well, but in Israel, you know, they're not really, they don't have the Sharia law and all that. They're Christian. I mean, they're Jewish, and they've got a great country. But when wrestling was on, well, I went over and met Shimon Perez too when I did
Right.
a, a, a soap opera over there, a comedy soap opera. But he told me that the only dependable ceasefire was when wrestling was on, and because the people were, you know, they just loved our show, and it really got over big. And to this day, my sons still go over there, and my sons have been going quite a bit, and they're well loved over there, and that's just we're so grateful, you know, that we can have a positive and a positive involvement in those people's lives, and so we're so glad to be of some comfort to people who are suffering, you know, a
Right.
terrible thing.
So you mentioned world class wrestling. You know, I grew up on it somewhat when it was on ESPN when I was a kid. Take me into just a regular night of wrestling at the Sportatorium in the 1980s. It didn't always seem like the most beautiful venue in the world, but there was so much magic that went on in that
Yeah,
setting.
yeah,
Like
it was.
what was it like being there?
Well, for one thing, we had a big fuse box under the stairs in the dressing room, and that fuse box, when the building was filled, the tubes would just glow, and they had fans blowing in there. It was all those codes were grandfathered in, you know, and it was
Right.
it was something else. And there were, but you'd smell the hamburgers and the tacos that they served at you know, they always and French fries. And there was a they sold so much food in there. It was like the tacos were great and the cheeseburgers were really good too. And I mean, I grew up over there, and I ate all that stuff. And in fact, I even sold cotton candy over there when I was a young
Wow.
teenager. Yeah. It was
It's
fun, a lot of fun, a lot of people.
It's funny too because I remember like years back, a friend of mine had an apartment, and it was like not the nicest apartment in the world, but we always had so much fun doing stuff there. So after we were watching some old world class, he's like, "I'm just going to start calling this apartment Sportatorium from now on." He's like, "It's not the best place in the world, but man, we have a lot of fun here."
Yeah, go for it, man.
So, that's also what I think of when I think of the Sportatorium. Sometimes my friend's dingy apartment from like 15 years ago, but
Yeah, yeah.
we lost your brother David before I started watching wrestling, but discovering his body of work later on, he was just outstanding. What do you think about him made him such a big star?
Well, Dave was a technician and he loved the science of wrestling. He understood wrestling, the counters and the reversals and everything, and the people, and when to do what he did, and the things he said. He just inspired people. He really did. He would have been a great football coach. He could really give a great pep talk. He was something else. In fact, he was a basketball coach when he was in high school. When he was in high school, he was pretty much took over the basketball job for the coach, and he was the youth basketball coach for
Wow.
years. Those kids loved him. And
Wow.
then Dave also flew. Dave flew us a lot of the trips. Dave was a pilot like my dad, and so Dave was real dependable when it came to that plane. He didn't take any shortcuts, precautions, and all that.
Right.
He was good.
His story isn't in the movie, and he's probably someone some people don't know a ton about. But what can you tell me about your brother Chris Von Erich?
Chris Von Erich,
Yeah.
man, Chris had a little lion's heart, but he was in a his frame was just not that big. It was about 5'8", 5'7", and about 165, 170 pounds. It was just not light, not heavy enough to do what we were doing. And
Hmm.
that's all he wanted. That's all he wanted to do is what we did. And man, because we could use him in so many other areas. Like he was a great artist. He could draw really well. Made funny cartoons too. I wish people could have seen that, but all he wanted to do was be like us. And it was just sad because he had asthma, and so he
Right.
had to take a kind of it's like a steroid, but it's really for asthmatics, and it stunts your growth. It doesn't
Hmm.
make you grow. It makes your bones brittle too. And so he started getting broken bones, you know, even from like things like drop kicks and forearm stuff that you take every day, 10 times a match, but it was just too much for Chris. And it was like painfully obvious to him one day that he would never be a wrestler. And he wanted it so bad. It just wasn't going to happen. And
Interesting.
yeah, it was just
I really enjoyed your induction into the WWE Hall of Fame when they inducted the Von Erich family, and also your participation when you were part of the Fabulous Freebirds induction. Also, what was it like having those guys? First of all, your brothers as your partners, but also having foils like the Fabulous Freebirds to all at once, all of these young stars. Something you don't
yeah,
see a
yeah.
lot of in wrestling nowadays is stars that young putting a
Well,
body of work together like you guys did.
yeah, I think the youth of those guys, the fact that we were all kind of in the same boat, that we wanted to make a name for ourselves, and all know, we watched professional wrestling growing up on television, a lot of us did, and especially my brothers and I. So as we came up, we kind of had little improvements we thought would be good into it, and instead of matches being 30 minutes and 60 minutes, like 15 or 20 minutes was, but hot, hot and moving fast. And I think people liked our style, and it was different. And through the great TV rating, I think the highest TV rating for any TV show. I mean, any wrestling show. So yeah, I think those numbers are all stand for a long time.
it was so cutting edge. Not only was the show itself, you know, just production wise and technically cutting edge for that time, but like you said, the six guys, whichever combinations of you and your brothers it was, and also with them, I think the oldest person out of that crew easily is probably Buddy Roberts at that point. And he was probably like what, 30? Like,
Yeah, yeah. It was like we were a bunch of young guys, and we had learned, you know, because after every week you can see what your TV rating was, you know, and so we watched that rating go up, and it was all of us, you know, it was a combined effort. The Freebirds and then Chris Adams and Gino, they worked hard too, and we had some great matches. But we knew that, and especially with the Freebirds, those guys were like, especially Buddy Roberts was like one of those crash test dummies. You know, you couldn't hurt him. And Buddy and Terry was a big battleship of a man, you know, and you could just, you know, go with him the whole time. Now, Michael wasn't that kind of athlete, but he was a great talker, and that's really important in wrestling too. And so it just made for a combination of guys that were just perfect for us, and had that great run. But it was all because we realized that good TV is something you have to work hard for a
yeah,
good, strong TV show like we had. But and we paid the price. We woke up really sore and limping, and some of us can barely get around today. But you know, it made a great TV show, and it was something worth doing. Worth doing is worth doing right.
a few weeks ago we had Gerald Briscoe on, and he was talking a little bit about Michael Hayes too. I'm interested to hear your opinion on this. He thought Michael Hayes, wrestling mind wise, was sort of this generation's version of Pat Patterson in terms of his mind. Do you kind of see that for Michael?
Uh, yeah, Michael was really good for Michael and for the Freebirds, but you know, when I think of wrestling minds, we had a guy in our office, David Manning, who was a
Mm,
referee. He was a genius. He was really good, and I have to give him a lot of credit for our show being so well. He and Dave and me and Kerry and my dad, you know, that was what made world class. But David was a real good hand for us. But
that's
nobody
interesting.
picked him up. He didn't get hired by anyone, so go figure.
That's interesting. You always hear about Gary Hart around that time too, with some of the things that he was contributing. Um,
Yeah.
it's interesting you mentioned Gino and Chris because they were actually next on my list. I always found their stories and their work so interesting, and just wanted to get what they were like to wrestle, and you know what they were like outside the ring.
You talking about the birds, you mean?
I was talking about Gino Hernandez and gentleman Chris Adams.
Oh gosh, they were. See, we were young kids, and so we had a lot of fun together too. But you know, there's a lot of in the ring. We we laid it into each other, you know, and everybody knew what was coming, and so defended themselves. You know, it made for good TV. But Gino was a practical joker, you know, and he was funny. And this is a mean story, but
If
Kerry
you
and I
can't
were
tell
out
it, you
signing.
can't tell it.
Oh yeah, I know. But Kerry and I were out signing autographs, and with the people, you know, it was like before a match, and so this lady was sitting in her chair, this kind of a heavy lady, you know, sitting in her chair, and she just went wild. She jumped up and she was like jumping jacks, I thought, and screaming, I'm on fire. And, and so, you know, she silenced the whole building. Well, what's going on, you know? And so everybody looked at her, and, you know, she looked fine. So she just sat back down, and everything was all right, you know. And so we got back to the dressing room. I thought, what the heck happened out there? And he told me Gino had crawled under the bleachers with that taser gun he had with the little
Oh
shocking
my
thing,
god!
and shocked that lady in the butt, and she jumped like that. That's not a good story for me to be telling, I guess, but I think
Wow.
about Gino and the tricks he played. He was so, oh, he would have been in such trouble if he'd have got caught, but the lady thought it was a short or something, I
She probably
guess.
didn't even know what happened.
Yeah, no, he couldn't have.
Man. So,
Oh, man.
your sons Marshall and Ross are pro wrestlers now. What did you think when they told you they were going to pursue that? And what's kind of the experience following their careers been like for you?
Well, It reminded me of my dad, to tell the truth, because my dad used to say, "Hey, you guys don't want to be like me, getting beat in the ring all the time. I mean, always sore." And we said, "Oh, sure, Dad, whatever, whatever." But inside, all of us wanted to be just like Dad, you know. Well, my sons, I was there out at we were in the at the ocean swimming one time, and I said, "You guys don't want to be like me. Look at this. I used to run the high hurdles and the 400 meter and the 300 intermediate hurdles, and I love to run. And now I can't even do it. I mean, I barely get around. I hated that." But they said, you know, "Yes, sir, Dad, but we know what we want to do. It's in their blood. That's what their dad did, what my dad did. It's like our craft." And I think all young men want to be like their dads. My sons do, and I wanted to, and my brothers did too.
Yeah, in some way, I think you always kind of I can relate to
Yeah.
that too. Um, what was the experience in AEW like for the little couple of shots you had with AEW and Ring of Honor there with your sons?
Oh, my boys loved AEW. That's a great company. I really liked it. I think these guys, I really think that's probably their favorite of the wrestling operations, and they like the way it works. And Tony Khan's a genius. He really is. He's somebody that loves what he does, and you can't help but admire him. I met him, and my sons met him, and a first class guy. And
And it
so,
seems like he knows all the history too.
oh, he's one of those kind. Yeah, he's an expert. But if you work full time, like 7 nights a week, you just can't shine like you could if you work 3 or 4 nights a week, because there are a lot of injuries today. I mean, wrestling has gotten like football. There are major injuries, and you got to fight through it. But you've also got to decide some things. Pain is telling you it needs to be corrected. And you can't just turn your back on your injuries, and then one day your shoulders have grown back wrong and things like that. Ignore it, ignore pain, and next thing you know, you're really, a bad way. The pain is, you've got a good reason for pain. You need to take care of your body, not just wreck it. Yeah.
We're going to move on to something we call the three count. It's going to be three quick questions and your answers. First one: was there a wrestler who best fit in with the Von Erich brothers, either as a partner or as a friend on the road, and who would that be?
Yeah. Funny you'd say, I would say above all of them, Bruiser Brody.
Interesting.
Frank Brody was like a buddy to me and Kerry and Dave. And we just liked them, and plus, we really were, my brothers and I weren't bodybuilders. Now, Kerry did develop that way, but I never wanted to be a bodybuilder. I just wanted to lift weights to be a better wrestler, so my kickouts would mean something. So my drop kicks would mean something, but never to just build your body. And Frank Brody was like that. Frank would work out for hours, but he'd take a heavy bag and put leather gloves on and just slam that bag back and forth, thickened him, and it made him powerful too.
Wow.
And so he gave us a lot of good tips about strength. He was a good strength man. He was
Interesting.
strong.
I think one of the most fascinating things that I found about studying Bruiser Brody later on was, as I was a sports writer for 11 years, and I was fascinated to learn that when he got out of college, that he was a high school football sports writer before he got into wrestling. So just knowing that was his background was like, so that big monster was
Yeah,
was
yeah,
covering high school football in Texas. Are you kidding me?
yeah,
So
yeah.
I loved learning that about him, and just learning more about kind of the way his mind worked for like booking and creative things and things
Uh-huh.
like that too.
Yeah.
Such a loss when we lost him, but what a fascinating guy. Um, Second question: you wrestled a match for the WWF in Madison Square Garden against, I believe, the unpredictable Johnny Rods, if I have the match right. What was it like to wrestle that one time in the Garden?
Well, I won my match, and so they've told me that I'm one of the few people that has uh, 100% win loss rate in Madison Square Garden because I only wrestled there once, and so. But yeah, I wrestled Johnny Rods, and I was a young kid, and the old timers tryout kids, So I got a test in that ring, but it came out great.
And Rods was somebody that Vince McMahon Sr. often used in that way. I think Roddy Piper's first match at Madison Square Garden was Johnny Rods. And I think what's the crazy about Johnny Rods is that he's actually still training guys in Brooklyn, New York to this day in his early 80s. So
yeah.
A friend of mine was actually trained by Johnny Rods, and he said he still goes back and visits him every once in a while too.
Yeah, well, in wrestling, you have to be respected. You've got to stand up for yourself, and you get tested all the time. It's just part of it because everybody in that dressing room thinks he's the toughest guy in the business. They all think that, and so that's the kind of fellas you're with. But it's a business. It's just a job, really. I mean, eventually it just comes down to that. It's just another job.
Yep.
Travel to your towns, do your best, do it again tomorrow night.
And then the last question on the 3 count. You recently moved back to Texas, is my understanding. What did you like about Hawaii, and what did you like best about being back in Texas?
Well, I love the ocean, and I love to spear fish and crab and spear snapper out in the bay and then out in the deep water, tuna. It's beautiful. I just love that. And I wanted my sons to grow up to know how to throw a casting net and how to spear their own fish and survive on their own. And and we're going to keep our place in Kauai. We love it there. But when it came to my granddaughters, then they're at the age where they're looking at boys serious like, and I wanted them to come to Texas and be able to pick from Texas boys. On our island, there's only 70,000 people, and so there's not that much for a young girl to choose from. And plus, I kind of Texas is always going to be my home. I do love Hawaii, and I'll keep my home there, but Texas, the people and the food and everything about Texas, the coyotes at night and the wildlife. I love Texas. So I'll always live there.
And Texas is Von Erich, and Von Erich is Texas, and you can't, that's always going to be that way.
Yeah.
Kevin Von Erich, so great to connect with you today. I really appreciate you doing this. Enjoy all the attention that you're going to end up getting now that there's a feature film about you and your family out there. Really appreciate you taking the time today to join me. Thank you so much.
Well, it's my pleasure, Phil. It's nice to meet you. Call me some other time. We'll do it again.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
You betcha. So long.
All right. Have a good one.